audio is taken from USB, so we have that there. And gonna make somebody a co-host. Okay, so let us start off then. Just do a quick share of my screen, just so we have the Beyond All Reason as a nice little background to start you off here. And I'm going to kick off the fireside chat. So, hi everybody. Welcome to some of the games development students. Also, welcome some of our first year students who've come along today. Obviously, welcome the online audience. Today it's my pleasure to introduce PTAQ from Beyond All Reason. He's come here as our guest lecturer. So once a year in our games development, we try to get somebody who's involved in the game industry to come in and give a talk about what they do, how they got there. Now, I've conducted this in a few different ways over the years, but I find the fireside chat one is sort of the easiest on both the guest and ourselves. It also creates a nice environment where we basically get to have a bit of a nice conversation. Previously, myself and PTAQ spent a little bit of time on Monday just going through a series of topics to kind of give a logic to going through here. But mainly, PTAQ was here to give you guys a little bit of an insight into the world of games development, particularly from somebody who's both a community manager and a co-founder for Beyond All Reason, which is one of, I think, probably the most successful open source RTS game in the world right now.
It's up there.
I know Age of Empires, there's been a few different versions, but ironically enough, because of the remaster, the Age of Empires 2, that's taken a lot of the group there. But it is somebody who has to deal with the fact that, as we were speaking, several hundred people are playing your game right now, which is sort of a very, very different sort of experience for a lot of people. Previously, last year, we had Anna from Larian Studios, she was a cinematic artist, and she was our guest speaker last year. The year before that, we've had actually Chris Taylor, who was the actual original developer of Total Annihilation, which obviously this Beyond All Reason is a spiritual successor. And we've had a few other then. Some of them, we've also had past graduates from our own games development class who are now involved in the industry. So we always like to have somebody over, have a bit of a chat, and we'll try to keep it within about an hour or so going back and forth. The hope is once myself and PTAQ have had our bit of our conversation, to open it to the floor for you guys to have questions as well. The mic we've got here, I'll probably have to repeat the question. It should roughly grab the room, but because there's sometimes interactions with our main camera up there that I use for most of my online lectures, I try to keep it that I control the equipment for this one here. So with that said, let's say hi to PTAQ and to welcome you to games development in UCD.
Excellent, Debbie. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm excited to share some of my insights. I hope that this is going to be interesting for you guys over there.
Cool. So we'll start off just getting a little bit of a feel for yourself. So what was your background life and education? Did you get into games as a kid, or was this something that was the astronaut dream that a kid is like, my daughter already has said it, that she wants to develop games. That's her dream. She's 6, and that's her thing. Was this something that you were a part of, or what was your background growing up?
So yeah, I would say that the idea of developing games myself has accompanied me for most of my life. As a young kid in the 90s, I was a very big into games, and I was growing up in what I would say the golden era of gaming. We had titles like Age of Empires, Total Annihilation, Baldur's Gate, all coming up during this time. And I always wanted to develop a game. When I was a kid, I didn't have the skills to do so, but I always was kind of gravitating towards doing something of my own. And I tried to make an MMORPG at some point in my life as well, with a couple of friends. It didn't get anywhere, but I had a lot of fun as well. And well, here we are now with something a little bit more serious, I guess.
Yeah, and then so from an education background, did you study computer science? What was your background in education there? Oh. I lost you there. We're good our side. Just give Taku a second there. Our online audience, are you doing okay? Just if you can send a message there. So we're trying to figure out if it's Taku or if it's us that's the problem there. Okay, yeah, you're all good there. Okay. So sorry guys, it's just lost Taku there. Oh, I think you're back. Hey, how you doing?
Oh, am I back?
Yeah, you're back. No problem there.
Okay.
So just
I don't know
mentioning
some.
education. So did you do computer science? What was your background there in college going into this?
Yeah, so just making sure that everything is fine with the connection. Okay, so my background in education. So yes, I finished high school, then I went to the university, the Łódź University of Technology, which the first course that I started there was actually computer science, indeed, and I did it for a year, in which I sort of realized, well, this was mostly aiming at getting a good job at the time. You know, the computer science at this time was a very sort of, well, it had a lot of future, right? You would get a stable job. It was in a very high demand at the time. So I thought of it as something of a, you know, a good career move for myself. It was also, you know, I was pushed there by my parents quite a lot, but it was in line with my interests, of course, because I wanted to develop games, I wanted to develop software as well. But after a year, I kind of realized that it might not be the best path for myself, mainly because I would get a lot of anxiety. Like coding wasn't that much of my cup of tea at the time. I would have problems. You know, I'm a little bit dyslexic, so you know, things like writing the code and having you know, the comma in a wrong position would ruin the whole compilation and stuff like this. So it wouldn't it. I wasn't a very talented coder. Let's keep it at that. But at the time, I kind of realized that I do have a a bit of a thing for physics. So during my IT years, my computer science years, I did have a course in physics. You know, just one-on-one physics, which included a practical course as well. So you would have laboratory lessons, which really caught my attention because I liked to see the physics work in real life. I liked analyzing data, giving reports, and it really it has really grown on me, the love for physics. So for the next year, I realized that it might be the better path for myself to take to get a physics course on the same university as well. It's, I'm not sure if we mentioned that, but it's in Poland at the time. So which University of Technology. And yeah, I never went back from there. I really enjoyed these years in studying physics and learning about the world, learning about the science, and this sort of mindset of scientifically based method kind of accompanied me ever since, which I later applied to many of my you know, career
And then
endeavors.
from there, you kind of got to the stable job after that. You were working back in Poland. And
Yes.
then at that stage, the sort of beginning of your Beyond All Reason journey started that you were a player first. You were playing Spring. How did you find out about that?
Mhm.
What is Spring? What was that
Yes.
as part of your journey?
So my journey with this kind of games, it goes way back to the 90s, of course, with Total Annihilation coming out in 97, if I remember correctly. I played it, I think, like 2 years later when there was a CD Action. It was the biggest magazine in Poland talking about gaming at the time, and they always had a CD of some upcoming, some you know, title as a sort of an extra. And yeah, the first time I loaded up the CD, I think I spent, the whole day playing it. My parents were somewhere away, so I had, the time to actually to soak myself, to really deep in this game and basically play my day away. And yeah, I loved it ever since. It was something that, no RTS at the time really did. I liked, of course, Age of Empires. I liked StarCraft, CNC, but none of these games really went that far when it comes to the scale of the game, right? It is pretty much like in every RTS at the time, you would have this population cap of, I don't know, like 80 units, maybe 100 units. You would also have a limiting factor when it comes to selecting units on the screen. So in StarCraft, for example, StarCraft 1, you could only select like 12 units. So it was an RTS which is aimed at, at this ground scale sort of warfare. It's not an RPG. And what you expect is controlling bigger and bigger armies. And Total Annihilation was the first game to really delivered on that. It had, tanks, it had bots, it had navy, air, so all the aspects of warfare that a young kid always wanted to play with himself. And that's how my love with this sort of subgenre of RTS started. Then later, I think around 2008, I was looking for some sort of a successor to TA. I was looking, I think I typed something in Google, something approximating like Total Annihilation Online. And this is how Spring came up. This is how I learned about this. Spring RTS was basically this engine that was developed by a bunch of passionate developers, open source developers who just wanted to make first a replay player. So you could watch the Total Annihilation games in 3D, which was very exciting at the time. And then it kind of evolved into its own thing. It evolved into a game engine which utilized OpenGL, and many different developers tried making their own games in it. Most of them were stylized or based on Total Annihilation. One of the one of them was basically Balanced Annihilation, which I spent the most time with, and it had the most probably the most original or maybe like true to the original source material kind of feeling. So I really sticked with it. It was like Total Annihilation. It used Total Annihilation assets as well, and the balance, the unit roster, the gameplay. So I spent a lot of years playing this game, and I mean, around 2016, I realized this was when I was finishing my education. I realized that this game is probably the best RTS that I will ever play. Nothing really feels the same. Nothing even even compares to Balanced Annihilation at the time. I tried some other RTS releases at the time, but the genre was kind of dying away at the time, and there was no interesting propositions really. So and nothing really compared to Beyond All Reason. I'm sorry to BA at the time because of well, the gameplay is one thing, but also the Spring RTS. It To give you a very short summary of what Spring RTS is basically just an engine which is produced by people who wanted certain features in their RTSs, never got them, so they developed their own features within this engine. And basically, this is why Spring RTS, now called the Recoil, is an engine which is just full of very interesting and intelligent control schemes. So I think just something very simple like taking your mouse, dragging your over the screen, and this way you can make like a formation of units. Just non-RTS at the time did that, right? So this is something that sounds very simple, but it's still revolutionary, and I think one of the best things in the game that really makes you that helps your immersion in controlling your units, right? So this is how BA came to be. I played it for a while, and I realized that this is basically I will never play a better RTS in my life. And at the time, it had a very small community around it of, maybe like 50 active players, which all were, those grumpy old veterans which played it for the whole life. And basically, the game was finished in their opinion. So what we realized, I started promoting this game because I thought that, okay, this is a gem, but no one really knows. It's so obscure, and I think that this game is worth a bigger audience, basically, right? How are people not aware of this title? So I started first promoting it. I joined the team that maintained this project, and the thing was that whenever I promoted the game on different subreddits and other social media, the result of that was we had some success of actually getting attention of the players. People would try the game, but they would very quickly bounce away. And the reason for that was that at the time, well, there are several reasons. By the most significant ones was that at the time the new player experience was very lacking, basically because it was just created by a bunch of enthusiasts that were very tech savvy themselves, so they had no issues with installing a very old legacy application that lets you play those games. Also, the lobby client which connected to the games at the time, it was very bare bones. It was you would maybe you could compare it to an Excel sheet how it looked, and it also was very universal because it connected you to this Spring lobby server, which hosted all the games which were played at the time in Spring RTS. So whenever I would promote BA, what would happen is players come, they install the game, and they see BA, but also like XTA, some other games like Spring 1.19.7. So there were many other projects which lived in this one environment. So it was very hard to focus your promotional efforts into one thing. And also the retention was horrific at the time because there was no tutorial, there was not any single player content or only skirmish, which I think it even had broken AI at the time. So there was not many things that would make people stick, and if they played multiplayer, they would just get steamrolled by the old grumpy veterans which played the game for forever, basically. So the retention was very bad at the time. So we thought that we have to go further. Basically, if we want the game to succeed, we have to modernize it. We have to get some better infrastructure, some better server software, and work on the new player experience, and and create a community around it. So this is basically how bar became a thing. So another reason for that was that as I previously mentioned, Balanced Annihilation was basically considered a finished game, so there was no demand from the player base to really take it further. There were many problematic balance gameplay things which would make people bounce away, but they were tolerated and actually liked by the old player base. So they wouldn't really have this demand for any major changes, which were necessary if we wanted to take the game to wider audiences. So this is what sparked the idea of bar. Before that, there was a little effort, maybe not a little effort, actually, there was quite a lot done. But in 2013, if I remember correctly, Beharit and a few other developers, they basically wanted to take Balanced Annihilation and strip it of any proprietary assets, because as I mentioned before, Balanced Annihilation had this issue that it had copyrighted content from Total Annihilation, because it was pretty much just a transition to the new engine of the old assets. So the effort was basically to replace all those assets with original ones, so that we basically, as the team, don't get sued by the owners of the IP, which I think at the time were Atari, which they later sold the IP to Wargaming. So in 2013, I wasn't part of this effort. Most of the 3D assets, the units, the models, the animations, they were replaced by new models. And in 2019, when we were trying to get BA at the time to wider audiences, we realized that probably this is a good moment to take things further and leave BA behind, because basically there is no demand from the community to develop the game further. And this was quite good grounds to create a new project to restart Bar, because this effort has been abandoned. So with Balanced Annihilation, what we did, we polished those models, because in 2019, the models from 2013, they kind of started getting old, right? So we improved them, we improved the animations, we worked on shaders, on getting like the whole graphical package better and better. We developed music, there were composers that joined us, and it turned out that we very quickly reached a point where the project started getting some traction from the general RTS community, the general audience. Mhm.
Stage, and this is where kind of your community manager comes in. One thing quite interesting, that this really did revolve around Discord at the beginning. That you used
Yes.
for the player base coming in, and also for the developers. Can you speak to that sort of journey, that if you have a project like this, how important it is to have that central point of communication? Because again, you're all across the world. You're not
Yes.
country.
Yeah, so before Bar War was a thing, the whole community was centered around a forum-based community, which it was a PHP BB sort of forum, which was getting very old at the time, and but it was all aspects of Spring RTS and the whole environment at the time was very open source. The, were very open, was centered around open source. So like switching to Discord was sort of a controversial move, maybe for some of the people who were those very open source sort of absolutists that wouldn't use any proprietary software. But I think it turned out to be the best move that we could have possibly made. This is because Discord is it's a rapid chat. It has this sort of it's also very popular in gaming communities. So whenever I did some promotions, we would get people joining the Discord, and not only the game lobbies, which would make the community stick together much better. But also, I think that the major advantage of Discord was that we could mix in the development community, the contributors, and the player base in the same sort of environment. And what this led to is that the developers would see the feedback about their work, immediately. So if someone worked on something, they would see the appreciation from the player base, like instantly about this. So it would give them this little dopamine, injection that, okay, my work is being appreciated. Let's do something else, right? And it really created this sort of basis for adherence for all those contributors. And at the same time, it really facilitated the communication between the player base and the developers in the way that developers would communicate what they are changing, so there would be no pushback about the changes, because the players really, of course, Bar was made with this mindset, right? That we are going to improve things, that there is going to be change. This is an alpha game. This is not a finished product, and we want to get somewhere, but we are not there. We are very far from there. So with this mindset, the player base was also very open to us improving the game in various aspects, changing maybe some very fundamental, gameplay elements, and I think that this was fundamental for essential. I mean, for Bar success, that the players were enthusiastic about the changes, and the developers would see this enthusiasm, and it would give them the motivation, the power, the mana to work on the project and take it further.
That sort of day-to-day involvement, kind of that philosophy going through, for me, something I've mentioned before, when we talked before, was it almost mirrors your physics kind of background. This idea that you do an experiment, get a report, see how it goes. And I think that this seems to be also how you run your social media as well, that you've tried different things. So like, can you speak to that about your social media engagement to try to build up a community for an open source game where you don't have money, you don't have the ability to get a billboard,
Yeah.
rent TV time, or anything like that.
Yes, so big disclaimer, Bar is a zero budget game, as we call it. So there is no budget going into any marketing, any sort of, advertisement of the game on social media. So we had to kind of improvise there. And I think that we have done, well, apparently we have done quite a good job at that. So the way that I approached it, because this is something that, well, you don't have good role models, you don't have good, experiences of different people that you can, look up to and try to copy them. It was basically, advertising or marketing an open source niche RTS in a, dying genre, the genre that's considered dying at the moment, and also a very unique, specific game, right? I don't think that there are books about this that you can read and try to uh, stand on the shoulders of giants. Speaking with a metaphor here. So the way I approached it is, okay, let's try some things that I think might work. Just guess. Try if it sticks. If it sticks, iterate, analyze, and use the methods that seem to work, right? And I think marketing bar was like very eye opening for me, because I was also, at the time I worked at the company which deals with retail, so I had some marketing experience, but applying it to bar, it had some caveats, right? It wasn't really one to one, so I had to improvise there. And the way I approached it was that I found a couple of social media spaces, like, mostly subreddits, RTS enthusiasts, some game development enthusiasts, and so on and so on. And I tried, basically showing how the game looks, some gameplay, maybe a little trailer here and there, clips from the game and stuff like that. Uh, and I did it just, quite systematically. There was a lot coming from me at the time, a lot of effort, but also like every time I posted something, on like 12 subreddits, I would have a response from one or two of them and see, okay, this goes up, and then I would see, okay, this message works for this sort of audience, so I have to make notes about that, and then try to analyze like what sort of like what aspects of this message actually made these people notice it, made them comment about it, made them engage with it, and ultimately download the game, and lead to the final result that we are looking for, right? And play the game and stick. Right, so I would reiterate, and find those different solutions there. This is basically something that I think that you cannot really teach someone. This is something that have to be learned by your own experience, because the way you carry out this marketing is very it's not one size fits all. It's very, very specific to the community that you're dealing with, to the project that you're working on. And I also think about it in a functional way. So marketing should not only be considered one-dimensional sort of effort to get more players play the game. Of course, this is the main thing, you want to get the players play the game, but also I wanted to build a team around Bar, right? So because Bar or any other open source project, it lives and breathes because of the contributors, because of people who are willing to spend their free time to improve things, to work on the project. And there is, the currency in this sort of project is basically people's motivation, their effort and stuff, not money, right? There's no monetary incentive behind Bar. So what I did is try also those game dev communities. So for example, Linux subreddits. I think it was a big revelation for me that whenever I promoted the game in Linux gaming, so Linux gaming is not a very big community. It's like a couple 100,000 people maybe on this subreddit. They have this pun in Linux communities, like there are dozens of us, dozens, right? So, but So you would not get that many players out of this effort. Like if you compare it to dropping a clip on like games subreddit, this would have a very different scale to it. But you would get a very specific type of a player because if someone is a Linux user, that kind of seems that he might be a tech savvy person, he might be a coder, he might be a computer scientist, or have this sort of like their chances of actually becoming contributors were much higher than Windows users, for example, right? No, no offense to Windows users, I'm one. So, but the thing there was that every time I promoted the game, like the response was very nice and welcoming because Linux users, they really appreciate open source projects. But also we would get those players who would then, try the game, see some issues with it, maybe some functionality that they lacked in this in bar, and would instantiate in them. This would trigger them to actually contribute to work on those issues, to add those functionalities in the game. And this is the basic mechanism how bar actually gets contributors. Like you play the game, you don't like something or you're lacking some functionality, and then you make it your own because PRs welcome, as we say. You can always request your code to be pulled into the game, and if it's good quality, well, it becomes part of the game, and now you can appreciate the fruits of your own labor, and the other players are also going to thank you immensely for the things that you've done. This is how we've got the like 90% of our contributors by this mechanism.
This sort of build up, this gradual build up. Around 2023, though, things changed for you. There was a ramp up in player involvement. So how did that all happen? You eventually got to, I wouldn't say mainstream success, but like relatively, I mean, once you're over 1,000 players a day, if you look at Steam stats, you're doing better than commercial RTS games that have had literal millions invested.
So this is an excellent question, and it has a quite interesting answer, I guess, as well, because there was no single thing that I would say has changed things for us, made us reach wider audiences. It was a very gradual process. So we were doing our thing, basically. We were developing the game. We were doing improvements here and there. We did drop a major graphics update, I think, in the beginning of 2023, which I guess, well, it was a big thing, but it was still like just iterative, getting the game 1-2% better and better and better and better. So there was no breaking like changes. But the thing that I think we reached at this point was this sort of like a pivot point where you would have less people trying the game and then bouncing from it, but you would have more people actually, there was some sort of balance that we reached there, that people would actually try the game now and adhere to it, and stick for longer, make some social bonds with other players, and then it kind of started exponentially growing from this time, from just sort of mouth to mouth promotion, but also at the same time we got noticed by a couple of internet influencers. We had Winter, which was at the time one of the biggest StarCraft streamers, try the game and really like it. We had some other YouTubers also. I think in 1 week we had this sort of weird singularity of many influencers finding out about bar, really liking it, making videos. So this was a place where our graph of the player base, it basically went like a hockey stick, and we had, I think, before that about like 200 concurrent players on average, and then all of a sudden we had 1,000 or something like that, right? So this was a major thing. It was surreal to really experience, and it gave us this this feeling that wow, Baris might not be just a niche thing. It might not anymore be a obscure RTS that a bunch of enthusiasts play. It might be something that, you know, is now reaching wider audiences. It might be something that really sticks in the mainstream of RTS. So having this in mind, well, also having so many players to deal with now, we had more feedback. It accelerated all the things because, well, now we had more contributors, and the contributors that already were there now had this little kick in the butt that, well, we have to now fix this, fix that, fix the infrastructure, make it scale better, and so on and so on. So it really accelerated our you know, development efforts on the game. And but yeah, coming back to your question, there was no, you know, one big thing that happened. It was just sort of you know, us reaching this pivot point where it went exponential. Before it was just, you know, kind of very linearly, slowly growing, and then it went poof.
So from there, the one thing you mentioned, you can share your screen. I think I've got to set up you as co-host, so that should allow you to hear your screen. Hopefully, there'll be a big green button in Zoom there. Um, so, so the last bit of it before we open it to questions to the floor is just that element of sort of keeping people motivated. Because again, this is your role from this community manager position, this mission as a co-founder, of trying to get a project like this and keep people motivated. I know you have a little slide there you'd like to show on
Yes.
that. So what
Okay.
I'd say is, yeah, that's good to keep people motivated, and then to talk about then that interaction between people's motivation when they are in that passion stage. How
Mhm.
do you deal with that? Because when people are passionate, it's a lot harder to
Mhm.
moderate it, to deal with passionate players and so forth. But I think lead in from the idea of how to get people motivated, how to people to keep engaging. I think especially for people here who are just doing sort of games development to make little prototypes, to at least have something for
Mhm.
their portfolio before they leave us here in computer science. How to keep that going? Because it's very easy when I have two assignments. They get set. They have to present it to me and to my demonstrators. That forces them to do it. But if you don't have that motivation any longer, and you're finished college, how do you keep it going?
Yeah, so the science of motivation is something that was really essential to my work at Bar, because I was not only the marketing guy, I was also trying to, you know, be a team builder there, the real guy who makes the team stick together, who makes them, you know, retain this passion and contribute, not short term, but really, you know, take the like become part of the team for a longer period, right? So the science of motivation was something that I really tried to read into and read about, and it became apparent to me that in psychology, the motivation is a very narrow term, and the thing that most people call motivation is actually just a component of a wider idea of adherence. And so I'd like to talk about that for a moment here. Uh, I think that there was some other part of your question that I
It was
the later one.
where this once we get to a stage where you do have an active, passionate
Okay.
that has that habit, it's the
Oh yes.
motivation, it's how to deal with all the outside factors that
Mhm.
then come in.
Yeah, so because like similarly to how you had this pivot point with Bar becoming popular and feeding into its own popularity and becoming, you know, exponentially growing, the same thing happens basically with adherence. So adherence is this little term which basically means that how long or how much effort are you able to put into something and how long are you able to stick with it, right? So can you see my cursor, by the way? Can you? Sorry. Get the,
Yes.
yes. Okay, excellent. So as you can see on the y-axis, you've got adherence, and on the z-axis, you've got on the x-axis, you've got time. And what this graph shows is basically how much effort or how much of your own mana you're putting into some project in your life. So let's say that that you want to work out, you want to go to the gym, start doing some sports, get in shape, and so on. This is maybe the most simple way to explain it. So you've got some inspiration. Inspiration is the first component of adherence. This is basically usually it's an outside external stimulus that makes you want to do something. So for example, you have seen someone in shape, right? You have seen Arnold Schwarzenegger photos or something like this, and you said, I want to look like this guy. Or for example, when it comes to the game, was like, okay, I want to contribute to this game. I want to be how like the developers of it. I want to get this recognition and so on, right? So you've got this inspiration, and inspiration is something that's very short-lived. In psychology, they say that this is usually it's a couple of hours that you have, and maybe maximally it takes 2 days for the inspiration to kind of peter out, because you need some internal stimulus as well in order to keep it up, right? So inspiration is this first one. It very quickly collapses in the face of hard work. So another example, you want to take up guitar, right? And you have this inspiration. You have seen Jimi Hendrix or someone else play, and now you want to do the same. But it takes time. It takes hard work to actually start, making nice noises with the guitar. And in face of this difficulty, the inspiration part, this external stimulus, is very short-lived. So then you need to build up motivation, which is an internal thing. And it's basically having reasons to actually stick up with your project. So for example, with guitar, I have to now think about like, what are the reasons? Why do I actually want to play the guitar? I'm not going to be Jimi Hendrix, right? But maybe I would have a few gigs. I would, join the local, jam session. I would get some recognition from my friends. Yeah, so we have those internal reasons right now, right? So I want to play guitars, and it takes you a little bit further. So you see this dotted line over here, the dashed line. It's basically is the threshold in which you're actually doing the thing, right? So first you forget this inspiration, which brings you there, and now you start doing the thing, but it's very short-lived, right? Then you have the motivation. So the motivation is something that makes you sometimes even do more of the things. So even more that is, healthy for yourself. So you play the guitar for, 8 hours a day, not being a professional musician, but you're spending so much time because your fingers bleed right now, but you are so motivated to do the thing that you actually can go even, higher than the threshold of adherence actually is, right? So but this also means that motivation is something that peters out after a while. In psychology, like they say that it takes probably around 4 weeks for most people to lose the motivation. Like I think that this is this anecdote that everyone knows. Like every year, there's New Year resolutions for everyone to go to the gym, and the gyms are very crowded for about 4 weeks, and then at the end of January, the gyms are empty again. So you can get back to to actually work out there in silence. So motivation, as you can see, it only can get you up there, right? And at some point, you will have to take a more formalized approach to the project that you are trying to work on. So this is where the intention comes in. Intention is the point where you have developed a clear and realistic plan for achieving your goal. So now you know that, okay, it takes this and this amount of time to actually get in shape. It takes this and this amount of time to learn a new song, right? So you now have those realistic realistic expectations about the work that you have to perform to get somewhere. And intention sets this baseline for, okay, I have to, for example, train 1 hour every 2 days, right, to get in shape. So you now know how to get there. But intention is only a rhythm. It is not something that is an internal stimulus for you to do the thing. So there will be some worse moments, right? So you will get sick. You will have these times when you, for example, you know that you have to go to the gym, but you kind of look at your shoes and say, no, not today. Please, I can't take it anymore, right? Your muscles, are painful. Yeah, and so this is where the willpower comes in, right? Not everyone has the proper willpower to do everything, right? So this is where most of the people will have issues continuing a project, but you have to take it into account that this is something that that's an essential part of every project that you are going to take on. And even if something is like you're actually already passionate about it, there will be harder moments and you have to remember about them. So this is where the discipline comes along. You will have to have this willpower to basically when you feel not going to the gym, you will have to force yourself a couple of times to actually do that, to adhere to your plans. And after a while, you will notice that the amount of willpower that you have to, conjure, kind of goes down, right? So it's not anymore such a big effort to, to get yourself from the chair and do the things. And the discipline, it's also something that after a while you cannot take it anymore. It's something that because the reward of doing something is you have those diminishing returns. So playing guitar, you're not going, you're not accelerating your guitar skills all the time. You're going to have some sort of ceilings that you reach at some point that you will have to break through and stuff like that. So it gets harder and harder. But at the same time, the amount of discipline, the amount of willpower that you have to spend on getting back to it, it gets smaller and smaller. So this is good news, right? So after a while, you will see that the discipline is not anymore something that you have to conjure. It's something that becomes part of your daily life, and this is where a habit is developed. So most in most studies, it says that habit is something that develops around the fifth week, the maybe 1 month of doing something regularly, right? So this is not from the starting point, but from the point where you actually have the plan, right? From the intention point. And now the habit is something that, so for example, with the example of the shoes that you have to put on to the gym. Now you lay your shoes in the same place in your house every time. So basically, you know that if you go to the gym, the shoes are right there. So it doesn't take you a long time to actually look for them, right? So it makes this, this effort, this discipline needed to be used into doing something. It kind of bridges this gap that now it's just easier for me because it becomes part of my daily routine, right? I know now that I don't have to keep reminding myself to go to the gym. I know that this is Tuesday, so I'm on the gym this Tuesday, right? So this is where the habit kind of takes you further, and this is when it becomes much easier to stick to your goals, right? Because now it slowly becomes part of your life, and I think that the final one is the most beautiful. This is what we all are aiming for with our projects, is for it to become our passion. And passion is something that will make it basically your life. That will make it part of yourself. So you are no longer, for example, a person that goes to the gym to get in shape. Now you are a gym goer. Like you are no longer someone who, learns guitar. Now you're a guitarist, right? So this is where passion, basically the other word for passion is identity. So it becomes part of yourself, right?
So I think we're kind of use that passion bit there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. For some reason it's not highlighting my square. What I'm going to do is share back, replace the current share with our Beyond All Reason opening page. I think is a very good one to go.
Mhm.
And I think the last bit before we open it to the questions is, so you've motivated players to get to that passion. You've
Mhm.
now got that stage with the developers that are ongoing. Obviously, you have to moderate to a certain thing, so that becomes an issue now. And I know we won't go into too much detail, but that you have to form groups to help moderate different users. But
Yes.
now we're at that stage of what is the future for this? Now that this is an ongoing community that's
Mhm.
again with thousands of players actually playing, where do you go next?
Mhm. So I think a very short just aspect that I would like to bring from the last question is that in order for this project to succeed, in order for it for the people to adhere, you also have to kind of create incentives for them, right? So this was like the marketing is only the inspiration part. So you create those external reasons for them to try the game. Then you have the motivation is mostly about making the game more friendly to the new users and create those habits. And I think that this is very important. Just to quickly mention him that you have to create those incentives for players to play the game. So, like one of the things that how you do that is create the environment of the game in a way. For example, we don't have matchmaking at the moment. We have custom lobbies. So, in order to play the game, you have to go there. You have to coordinate with other users and vote for the map, vote for the for the game mode and so on, and then launch the game. So there is some a team effort to actually even launching the game. And what this results in is that the players are going to stick together, they're going to form social bonds and stuff like that. Right? So there is an additional incentive for them to play. So once they get bored with the game, there is some friend that is going to send him a Discord message. Where are you? Right? I want to play with you today. Right. So this is one thing. You also have to create the incentives for the contributors to contribute, and this is by relaying this. If you see that there is some enthusiasm about some change, you always have to try to be the cheerleader of the team and show it to the developers, right? So there is some Reddit post, there is some YouTube comment. You always want to share this to the contributors in order for them to see that their work is being appreciated. Also, you want to create incentives for the players to actually start contributing. This is automatically a thing which I already talked about, right? Because you have those players that are going to see the issues in the game, and then you have to create this very welcoming environment of the on GitHub, for example, that it is very clear that we welcome any improvements from anyone. We welcome suggestions, we welcome feedback, testing, and so on and so on. So this is I think essential for Bar. And also maybe the hardest part of it all is creating incentives for the developers to actually play the game, because I think that is essential for them to understand the audience. I think Bar does a very good job at understanding their player base, like many AA titles these days have troubles with. And this is basically because the developers are also players of the game for the most part. They interact with the audience, they play with the audience, and they are the audience themselves. I think, which I think is very healthy for the project, right? And also, they also don't have to sometimes even receive feedback from the players because they see the issues themselves, right? So this is, I think, this is fantastic that we have this sort of an environment in Bar. But when it comes to the future, so this is the future for myself is I'm going to be doing those 4 things, creating incentives for the players, for the contributors, and but in the grander sense, when it comes to Bar, what we want to do is keep developing the game. There is no endpoint that we are looking at. Of course, there are some milestones that we want to reach. So, for example, we want to release the game on Steam, maybe some other platforms, and we want to get the game to a shape that. So we had this, pivotal point before, where more people stick to the game than bounce of it. But we want this to perfect this, to have a single player campaign, to have tutorials, to have more and more content that is also speaking to a wider audiences, because right now most of the content is aimed at multiplayer player base. But we want to create, but when it comes to RTS, general audience, people expect more single player content as well, and there are wildly more single player RTS enjoyers, because RTS is, by the most of the gamers, is considered a very sweaty sort of fast paced and maybe stressful sort of genre, where not everyone likes to go back from get back from a stressful day at work and then play Bar and maybe get stressed by the game themselves. This is not for everyone when it comes to the multiplayer. So the single player base, this is actually something that's very interesting, is that we might have this 15 15,000 concurrent, not concurrent, but daily users right now in bar in multiplayer, but it's only counting the multiplayer. So probably it's hard to tell because we don't have this sort of telemetry, but there's probably the same amount of players who actually play single player. We know that some of them log in, so we can see this data. And there are many single player skirmishes that are being played. There are scenarios that are being played. So we want to deliver much more of this sort of content. We want to enrich bar with a single player campaign with some lore to go along with it, and then take it to Steam. Also work on the stability and scalability of the infrastructure that we have right now, because we are still using some of legacy components there. But yeah, overall, I think that the answer to this question is there is no endpoint really with bar. There is no end goal. We don't want to finish bar. We want to keep improving it. We want to work on it, our whole life. Like me, myself, I'm so, I'm so rooted in this project right now. I'm so, let's say, maybe even, how do you call it? I'm so passionate about the project, or even obsessed about with this project, right? That I want to do it with my whole life, even if I, transition with my career somewhere else. I want to keep it as a hobby. Maybe I keep it as a same as the main thing at some point, right? But in any case, I think that this game has the potential for so many new things that are not there at the time, and potential for so much content that the players will, we haven't even talked about the modability of the game, right? There's so many things that I think that you, Evie, for example, are an enjoyer of those, customized lobbies as well.
Customized. So a lot of this games, I just to give a tiny bit of history of myself, I did start playing around the same time as you with the Spring engine. Here in Science, for about 2 years between 2006 2008, the Spring games were being played in the lobby here in the College of Science, to the point where it actually became an issue. So the big legacy here within UCD that's been very popular for many years going through. But again, I treat this as toy soldiers. It's being able to play at whatever age with a whole bunch of toy soldiers. Great. But we've been talking for an hour. We've given a good overview of Community Manager, what you've built on that. So I would like to open it to the floor for a bit of questions. If anybody has questions going, I might have to repeat the questions to go in. So we'll do one from the floor here. Yeah. Do you hear that?
Not really. You'll have to repeat it for myself.
So do you want to actually just run up and sit into the microphone? It might be the easier way. I'll do the people on the floor. I know we have one question online, but we'll take you over first.
So is there any challenges that arise because you're working with an open source public community that you don't think would show up if this was like a more traditional company?
I didn't get the start of it. Is it? Are there some ways that you are? Yep.
Some specific, so being open source. So if you have a commercial company, and you've got a set employees, there's very much if you're doing what you're doing as a co-founder, community lead, where you are a boss and you're able to go like, that's what we do.
Yeah.
But if it's an open source project where everybody's contributing their time freely, and this kind of also comes down to, I think Ogan here also has that, so it might feed in. How do you to manage your team? How do you solve disagreements? How is that sort of situation? Because most people think open source and see this as an anarchy that you're dealing with. So how could that progress again to produce what is now a game, as I said, that there's games that don't look as good as this game?
This is an excellent question, also like $1 million question, because this is something that we are still trying to figure out. And I can probably talk for another hour just on this. But basically, I think that in open source, as in comparison to my professional life, you probably, well, I think that there are many parallels, of course. I think that applying this sort of mindset also to professional business is a good practice. But with open source, you have to always reach this alignment between people, right? You will have to read what the different developers, what their aims are. You will have to discuss their ideas in a very welcoming way. So, for example, if we want to start some new sub project in bar, the way we do it is we first do a brainstorming session with everyone that's interested in some area, and then we try to always together come up with the way that we that we attack this thing, right? And Discord helps immensely with that, because this is basically an asynchronous communication engine, right? So whenever we have some issue, we just make a thread for it, we just make a new channel for it, and then we discuss it with everyone that's interested. And of course, there is going to be a disagreement, so you will have to create, this is inevitable, you will have to create some hierarchies in the team, which in open source, I think that the most classic way to do that is by veterancy or merit, right? Open source, many people say that this is basically a meritocracy, and it's a healthy way to do those things, because the more someone works on something, the more his word on it is valuable, right? Because he has the insights into it, he has the experience, but also it's sort of like a way to give back to this person, right? So if someone has reworked like half of the models in the game, right, has done so much 3D art for the game, he kind of naturally becomes this sort of authority in this area. So then we reward it, right, putting him a little bit higher in the hierarchies. There are not that many explicit hierarchies going, horizontally in bar. But we have the admins, which is myself, Floris, Ice Cubes, two Dutchmen, and one Hungarian Beharit, which were the founders of the game. So it's quite natural that we have the most authority in the project. But we also try to delegate different areas to core members, so the people that are with us from the day one, from the most time together with us, and have made so much for bar that they kind of that we value their input quite immensely. And so we have pretty much those three steps, so to speak. So you have a contributor, a core member, and the admin, right? So we do have the veto right to slash something if we want to, and like it's considered natural for us to do it. But usually it's not needed, right? Usually most of the conflicts, most of the differences in opinion are solved at the level of the contributor team or the core team, because there is a lot of alignment between where we want to take the game to. For some reason, like there's I'm almost not getting anything from your mic at the moment. I don't know why.
Okay, yeah. I lowered down the mic because we've actually got two speakers in the room. So you're getting a slight echo, but the echo is not actually coming from Zoom. It's coming from
this is much better now.
Sound bar that's above me and that guy at the same time, which is so weird. So I lowered it down a bit. Yeah.
So how is the actual back end of the game? Like, do you do it on like from like what engine did you use, and did you do it with like to collaborate with each other? You like each submit scripts to each other, or like how do you work through that, especially when you're all like just connecting through Discord and not necessarily the same place?
Yeah, so the simple answer here is GitHub. The whole game repository and all the components of the infrastructure are open sourced on GitHub, so you can see the issues, you can see the pull requests there, and everyone is basically welcome to commit, right? There is repository protection mechanisms. So, for example, you cannot just directly commit it to it, other than for a very small, small-sized team that can do this just for emergency reasons. But for day-to-day work on bar, you basically make your changes you locally, then you make a pull request, and then someone from the more experienced developers is going to look at the PR, give you some feedback about it if something is wrong in it, if some performance is lacking or anything like that, and then accept it if it gets improved, right? So we have this small sub team which is called code quality team. And we realized at some point that getting contributors to actually review the PRs of different people is quite a demanding task when it comes to open source, when it comes to this sort of project, because this is like the motivation. This is where the motivation comes back at us, right? But this time in a negative sense. So if you start working on bar, if you start working on any open source project, basically you have some sort of inspiration to do that, but it's internal, so you want to work on your own things, right? It's very rarely people want to also, review the work of other people because they're passionate about their own little projects, right? So this was actually quite a huge challenge for us to solve. That we had at some point, I think, like maybe 300 pull requests which were not reviewed. And I realized at some point, well, we have to force ourselves. And this is where the discipline comes in, right? This is when me, PTAQ, goes, hey, let's meet every week. Let's be here on Discord in a voice chat. Let's share screen and start reviewing those PRs together, right? And we are doing this since, I think, like half a year. And we reduced the amount of PRs to 70. So there's quite a lot of success with that. So as you all can see, it all ties back to the graph that I've shown you, right? There are some issues, like there is no motivation or intention for people to review the work of others. Well, this is where the discipline comes in. Let's be here every week. Let's have a set time and date for those PR reviews, and that's basically how we squash this issue.
So one thing that kind of intrigues me in that is my two hats, or my three hats technically. I teach the first year's software engineering. I then, for all the years, teach games development. And then my final years, I teach augmented virtual reality. But through my augmented virtual reality hat, I work a lot with companies who are developing AR and VR systems. But the irony is most of that development never gets seen because they're side projects. The companies say, wouldn't it be great if we had VR here or AR there? And you can meet with companies that have spent years on projects. And in fact, I've known people in industry that technically have never done any work. They've had 30-year careers. They've developed amazing things. I've gotten to see them, and certain people who've signed NDAs got to see them. But the main company decides at the end, nah, we're not going to release this. So the only thing I would say with open source is at least your contributions you've done would normally get visible. But what you're saying is sometimes those pull requests don't get actually into the system. So that negativity there, I can see, like, at least when you work for a company and your stuff doesn't get used, you got a paycheck. But here you might have spent hours going like, actually, I think the physics engine is wrong right here. You need this edit to there. And I think that the one other thing, just because I think I might be able to answer the question, the back end for you guys, obviously you have the recall engine, which is the fork from Spring.
Yes.
And then you have your own server code, which I don't know if it's still called Thai server or whatever.
It is.
It is still called Thai server.
Yes. By the wonderful creator.
So those are sort of like, you've built your own server infrastructure. You've built obviously back on Spring, and that is where you keep going. Obviously, if you did integrate eventually with Steam, you would try to integrate in some of their APIs there through. But yeah, that was mostly more of a comment than a question there. So before we go, and is there any other questions from the room or anybody online? And we had one question there. Okay. I think we might leave it at that. So thank you so much, PTAQ, for taking time out for this. It's been really great to have somebody, and also somebody a bit different, somebody coming from the open source community. Don't worry, I've plugged Beyond All Reason as much as I could within the school. And again, there's a legacy there. Back 20 years ago, Spring and TA were huge things here for a while, because again, it was an infrastructure thing. You had the computers. It was the end of our computer rooms, where we actually had entire rooms dedicated with 30, 40 very modern computers that did have 3D cards, that did have the ability to sort of play games. And everybody's back to their laptops. So we're going to finish up there. Thank you again. I think hopefully the microphone gets the claps coming through.
Indeed,
Yeah,
it did.
actually, 1%. Clap and I'll move the camera. So yeah, then we get that there. Cool. So thank you again. And I'm talking to you obviously on other things later on. And
Yes.
We'll finish that for today. And goodbye to anybody who's online. I recognize a couple of names there from third years and fourth years, so to join us there. Okay. And
Thank you very much indeed, everyone.
we'll end it there.
This
I'll
was
stop the recording.
excellent.